right, I want to welcome everyone to episode 31 of In Conversation with Convergence. As you know, we're almost 3 years running now, and we meet only with clients to discuss some of the top issues facing the industry and to really give our clients a platform to talk about their business and what kind of makes them unique in the marketplace. I'm joined today by a great guest and a longtime client, Mike Blake from Northern Trust. And Mike is, for all of you who don't know Mike, Mike's the head of business development for Global Fund Services and Insurance at Northern Trust. Mike, I know from many conversations you're a Marquette grad, and I will tell you that I've gone to the Big East basketball tournament at Madison Square Garden for about 32 straight years, and obviously always get to see Marquette, and over the years have stumbled into a few Marquette parties, right? Around the garden. So listen,
Good
it's
to hear.
nice to have you today.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you.
Yeah. So, Mike, let's start with just your background, right? I think it's always important for our listeners to know who you are, your pedigree a little bit, kind of, what you've done, and then we'll get into kind of what you're doing.
Sure. So I've been in the business for about 35 years. All of it in financial services and in really operations, technology, and administration. I started back on the in floor operations and back office operations at the Board of Trade and the Mercantile Exchange back when they were massive, separate trading floors. Um, I joined Northern many years ago in the Master Trust group where I was a young accountant and doing early days of online reporting back before kind of there really was the web interfaces that we're also familiar with today. I spent about 10 years away from Northern in mostly in software development and sales into financial services firms, doing online connectivity to back end systems, middleware type stuff, all in financial services. Northern was actually a client of ours for years. And then I came back to Northern in 2005 to really help with the build out of the global fund services business. And back then we were part of what we called the international group.
Yeah.
We weren't even really a fully formed admin, but it's been a very steady march since that time to kind of get to where we are today. So
Yeah,
today I've got responsibility for the sales teams for the Global Fund Services Group and folks that focus on insurance companies as institutional clients, and then some capital markets in there as well.
yeah.
And just this week I celebrated my 25th year at Northern.
Oh,
So
good for you.
yeah,
Congratulations, right?
a lot of fun.
You don't see that too often anymore, right?
You see it a lot here, but
Well, it's good,
there's
right? And
there's
and
a lot of us.
I was going to ask you what your two stints together added up to, right? So 25. Talk a little bit about Northern for our listeners, right? If you go way back, right, like we said in our little bit of our prep, right? Probably a lot of people think it's just a regional bank out in Chicago and don't have a great appreciation for kind of the global reach, right? Of the firm. So I'd love for you to just give an overview of the firm for us.
Yeah, Northern's an interesting place. We kind of like that the view to some degree about the regional bank or the Midwest bank, that the private bank that's in there. That's definitely part of our culture and the DNA of the firm. But we're 134 years old. We're independent. We're one of the few kind of big banks that are truly independent, undiluted by large merger or acquisition activity and kind of uncorrelated businesses that change the culture. We're about 23,000 employees on the institutional side, about 26 global offices. I think our wealth management business is about 50 locations, primarily in the U.S., some international as well. We're about a $15 trillion custodian administrator. We run about $1.4 trillion in assets through Northern Trust Asset Management. And, it truly is a global business. We've got clients in 53 countries. We're in pretty much every investable market on the planet, all the major fund centers. But the origins really are still that Midwest fiduciary private bank, and
Yeah.
that's a big part of the culture. The other
Well,
thing about Northern is,
it gives you that distinction in the market about at times boutique, high touch, great customer
yeah,
service, right? As you know, I spent over 10 years at J.P. Morgan, and I was right there and weathered the J.P. Morgan Chase transaction
yep,
where it was kind of like Noah's Ark, right? There were two of everybody, and and you kind of had it was survival of the fittest. So. Talk a little bit about kind of your growth story, right? Obviously there's organic, obviously there's acquisitions for capability and product, but a little recap of that and a view of that would be helpful.
yeah. I mean, in the business that I kind of think about most on a day-to-day business, we really weren't in it until about 2020, or excuse me, 2000. We, the bank had been a private bank, and on the institutional side, what that meant was largely a book of business supporting asset owners in the pension space. So everything, the master trust grew out of ERISA in 74. And that's what I actually started it. But in 2000, the bank sort of, saw a new vision for growth. And that was working with asset managers. And so back then, in the US, the market was largely sewn up by a few large competitors servicing US mutual funds. Europe was a wide open playing field. So we devoted our energy initially to European growth in this space. So we bought the back office of Ulster Bank, and that put us into fund services and middle office outsourcing in 2000. We began building out global fund services capabilities from our London branch. 2004, we got into the alts business with the acquisition of the Barings back office. So that was private equity, hedge funds, and real estate. I came back in '05 to sort of start the focus on the US. Um, and, on that front, it was a lot of organic growth, sort of building off the back of our own internal fund admin for our own funds and commercializing that externally. And in 2011, we bought what Citadel was trying to grow as a third party hedge fund administration firm. Um, and then we started to broaden it out even more. In 2016, bought a global broker dealer called Aviate
Hmm.
and added that onto the Northern Trust Securities brand. And so there have been little things along the way. I would say that in all these cases, though, in contrast to sort of what our you see in the market a lot, is we weren't buying for scale, we were buying for capability. That was how we entered a market. We really wanted the people, the talent, the knowledge. We had a lot of the systems. We weren't really buying in many cases, we weren't buying, a technical capability. We had that, but we just needed the people.
Yeah.
And so, really, what's neat about all those things is all those people largely have stayed and really become part of the Northern Trust, family and culture and whatnot. And so, um, it wasn't like you said with JPM and Chase. It wasn't Noah's Ark.
Right.
So it's been a great opportunity for those folks as well to really join the team and become leaders in the business as well. And that's really been, I think, a strength of the strategy over the years.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of mixed views out there right now about big bank versus next tier bank, and uh, the some of these places, without mentioning names, are really like kind of moving the Titanic, right, at times, right? I've always appreciated, back in my days, at Prudential when we did banking. I was the assistant treasurer, and we banked with Northern Trust, and the level of service was just terrific compared to others, right, at times. Um, a little, one thing you talk just related to acquisitions, and don't want to throw you a little curveball, but what I'm seeing out there, I'm just interested in your reaction to this too. When you look at fund admin, for example, right now, the premiums being paid for some of these firms are through the roof, and we're seeing people kind of moving more to lift outs of middle and back offices, co-sourcing, right, which is kind of in vogue right now a little bit. Just quickly, any views you have on those as alternatives to acquiring a book?
We definitely look at it that way as well. And I would tell you that you know a big chunk of our growth strategy has also been significant um, engagements with clients, right? So exactly that, right? Like market entry, I would point to a few different places where we got into Australia because of Future Fund,
Yeah,
competing for and winning that business, and really uh, selling them on the idea that we were going to be a strong partner and player in the region. And that was part of it, right? We've done that with, lift outs of other books of business that, again, largely what we'll think about, sometimes you do want a little bit of critical mass in a particular area, and that can be very helpful. Other times it's purely talent based. So it really, we're open to all of it, and we look at a lot of it. And sometimes you can do things via a strategic partnership with a client that you can't do in an acquisition. At least the commercial proposition can be dramatically different.
yeah,
But a lot of it really just depends on the client, what their objectives are. So,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
pretty hyper focused on our clients and sort of what makes them tick and what's going to mean, success for them. And I think that's kind of a good foundation for a lot of that
Yeah, I think that's a great
activity.
foundation. And, I think what's interesting to me about kind of the lift out and the co-sourcing right now is, we're seeing, I think, with the COVID phenomena, right? The cultures at some of these asset managers have changed, right? So that firm that was going to be in-house for everything culturally and built it from the bottom up, all of a sudden is facing some of the realities the service providers face, right? The war on talent, the ability to keep attracting and growing with qualified people. So, some of these people are kind of shifting that burden to you guys, right?
Yeah,
Right, and they culturally never, you would never have thought they would be open to that kind of model, right?
right.
So it's interesting. Um,
Y-
Let's talk a little bit about, you did, I want to talk about how you're different, right? And your peer group, different than your peer group. And you first talked a little about your service model and kind of your culture and DNA and kind of your, fiduciary roots a little bit. But I'm aware of this whole, um, um, you have this approach to your service model called whole office solutions, and I've never heard that term, and I'd like for you to kind of tell our audience a little bit about what that is.
Sure. So I think, in context to what you see in the industry, or in contrast, I should say, a lot of folks are focused on, in the term you might be more familiar with, this sort of front to back, right? Service providers want to say we can service you end to end. We do the same thing. We want to say that as well. But whole office is really a little bit different in that, in the context of front to back, it usually starts with once the investment decision is already made. And then you're kind of dealing with all the things that are kind of on the cost side of the ledger. How do we process a trade more efficiently? How do we, deal with IBOR and all the back office stuff and flow that through. And it really is less about value creation. It's more about cost containment, efficiency, accuracy, which are all very, very important. But if you think about what does a manager care about most, they care about the value creation bit,
Right.
right? And so that's really where we're taking the front to back concept and trying to move even further up and support managers really in the the investment decision making process, right? So a couple of ways we're doing that. Well, let me break it down. If you think about it like from an operating model perspective, that cost containment, we do that as well, and we support middle and back office, and those are great businesses for us. And we've tried to enhance that with kind of an open architecture approach by partnering with multiple OMS providers, for
Right.
example. And what that means is better connectivity. We'll stay closer in sync with them. Onboardings will go faster, things like that. Change management will be better. And then, a couple other things from an operating model standpoint where we're adding value are places like outsourced trading. So we have a service called Integrated Trading Solutions, which can be a component bit of outsourcing. Like, for instance, you trade globally a little bit. You don't want to have a trader up all night. You could outsource that bit to us. We've got people in market doing it during market hours. It's a better outcome for you, potentially a better way to run the firm. Foreign exchange, everything, we can take trades right off of an OMS, handle that, end to end for you. Also, things like currency management, right? Portfolio hedging in a very automated, efficient way. And in both those, we can provide value adds around TCA and things like that that you might not get either internally or with other partners. But when you go further up into the front office, that investment decision making process, we've been investing heavily in partnerships around what we call investment data science,
Mm.
right? So there's two that I would point to as really good examples. One is a firm that we work with called Equity Data Science. And what they do is they digitize the investment process in the cloud for improved transparency, scalability, repeatability across functions like idea generation, research management, portfolio construction, risk management. So these are things that other custodians, other admins really aren't getting into at all.
Right.
We have another partner called Essentia, which is all about behavioral analytics. So
Yeah, which is
the one
interesting.
analogy is like, you see the quarterback get off the field, he starts looking at an iPad right away. Like, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? All that. And Essentia is kind of like that. They use historical and ongoing analysis to track the decisions that are made relative to performance. And they identify areas where a manager is adding value or perhaps destroying value. And then there's a feedback loop and coaching that goes along with that. So, you can think about it like there's some folks that might not want you in their business that way,
Right.
and they tend to be more like guys that look like you and me, a lot of gray hair and whatnot. But the the younger generation, if you will, the more, I mean, it's all about that stuff
Yeah.
because it's all about improving your alpha around the margins and not leaving anything behind. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that's going on there. And you would be amazed at, how many clients and prospects are interested in that. It's really
Well,
exciting.
yeah, what's interesting about it is I've always thought the custodians and the fund administrators that are also have an asset management business, right? Kind of have this unique lens, right? That most admins and custodians don't, right? Or many don't, right? And I think you just better understand your clients' issues and challenges because you're in that business, right?
Right.
Right, and at the same time, when you kind of couple that now with, I think people's are very open to. I'll go back to the co-sourcing, right, example. People are very open to shared responsibilities if you've got a better mousetrap, right? So I think it's a very very cool thing that you guys are focused on in terms of whole office because that is the old front, middle, back, right? Discussion, right? All right. Last thing I wanted to shift to today was just kind of your data strategy. Obviously, something very near and dear to our hearts here at Convergence, and you've been a great client with market data from us. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of how you think about data and your strategy and internal data and how to optimize that and and then kind of then the client side of it, right?
Sure.
Where the client has to do data management or data warehousing, right? We had a large, believe it or not, we had a large custodian outsource all their reference management work to us, so we could take it to a whole nother data science level, right? But love to hear a little bit about your approach to internal data optimization, and then kind of externally how you're working with clients on data.
Sure. And by the way, like your data is fantastic, and you're the only guys out there that give us a view of the market the way we want to digest
Well,
it.
thank
So I
you.
know that everybody else who would hear this would be nodding in agreement there, but it really, prior to working with you guys, it was far more challenging to
Yeah, well,
just
thank
see
you. And we keep getting better. We keep
see
learning
what's
from
out
guys
there.
like you and how to make it better, right?
Yeah.
But
So
but
we
but
really appreciate the partnership. But data for us and our clients, I mean, everything is about data, right? Everybody, sees the future and sees all the advantages that's there. And I guess when we think about it for strategic goals for our clients, whether that's scale, cost savings, simplicity, or just insight, everything's got data at the core. And where you know, our business has evolved, right? It used to be kind of a closed system where, we created data in accounting and we presented that back to folks, um, in a variety of different formats, but it was still very much just our system. What we're being asked to do now is blend in data, aggregate data from multiple systems, be that, their own data that they're creating. They want
right.
to see it side by side next to ours, be it other market sources, other vendors, other system providers, things like that. And so what we've done is our platform is called Northern Trust Matrix, and it really is it blends together that asset servicing expertise along with data management, kind of powered by Snowflake to bring together, a solution that supports both aggregation, data integrity and quality, a single source of truth, and then ongoing agility to be able to flex, right?
Yeah.
So the technology underlying it is such that it can support all these things and make it easy to move data around and give clients, much better control over the data in not just our ecosystem, but theirs. And that's the thing I think that will enable a lot. It's already enabling the innovation that I talked about before with like investment data science, and things like that. But it's going to enable even more innovation as we continue to progress and add more tools and solutions to the whole office approach.
Yeah, I mean, and it's well said because I will tell you that we've seen more and more people very open to the discussion of outsourcing some of their internal data management, however that gets defined, right? For whether it's
Right.
where it's easy to put the feed the portal, feed the warehouse, right? Feed the beast, I guess. But then managing that beast, right, is can be a challenge, and it could be expensive if you don't have sophisticated tools. So listen, I want to tell you, I've been most impressed with you and the firm and your growth and your story, and I just want to tell you it's a real pleasure, and I'm really happy you were able to make time to join us today. You've been a great client, and we want to keep bringing value to you and keep feeding that ROI, right?
Terrific.
At
We've
Northern.
enjoyed the partnership ourselves. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been terrific.
All right. Well, thank you, and appreciate it, and like you, we're wrapping up 23 and spending a lot of time on 24 now already, right? It's
Getting
here,
ready.
it's here, right?
They
So
keep moving faster and faster.
yeah, yeah. The all right, excellent, Mike. Thank you very much. Thanks for
Sure
joining.
thing, George.
All right, good.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much.